It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. This is the second time, Anthony, that I've been streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 today. We did a live take command earlier. That was a good time. And if you missed it, the good news is, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on the radio or the Odyssey app, we're going to play the first part of it for you coming up at 4:30. Mike Leslie going to join us from Dallas, my buddy, my pal, who was actually, Anthony, in the background. If you look closely, and you know who Mike is, you can see him in the background of Brian Windhorst's takedown of Luka Doncic last night on SVP.
Yeah, everybody's been talking about that.
I woke up this morning to an ESPN alert about what Brian Windhorst said and Brian Windhorst trending. And I was like, oh boy. Yeah. What happened? And he just said a lot of stuff that was true in a very rapid succession about Luka Doncic. We'll talk about the NBA Finals, though, coming up a little bit. It is the final day of Commanders minicamp today. They wrapped up. It was about an hour-long practice, half hour shorter than was on the schedule. It was kind of a wacky bit because all of a sudden it's 11:59 and they blow the brr, brr, brr final horn, and we're like, that's it? That's all? And it was. They got good work in. There's a couple things that stand out, I think, Anthony, about watching this team practice that fans will get to see when they open it up for training camp in August. And the first thing is they practice with a purpose. Like, I know last year felt fast. This year it is like, let's go. And it's not the same yelling and screaming of Bieniemy trying to get on everybody's case all the time like it was last year, which, again, in hindsight, felt like nobody knew what they were doing, and he was trying to herd cats. And it's like, if you coach better ahead of time, you don't have to herd the cats. That seemed to be something that kind of showed itself throughout the year. But with Cliff today, there's a moment where they're getting ready to go into team. And he's like, all right, guys, get off the field. Because they're coming to the offensive field to work team drills. And Cliff is kind of like, hey, guys, be off. Like, when the defense gets here, we're going. You need to be off the field if you're not supposed to be on it, and let's go. But it's not a get off the field, like old school yelling at people type of thing. It's just like very matter-of-factly, let's go. Let's get off the field. Need you off. And then he's yelling at Zacchaeus and Brown. They were the first two wide receivers to go in this particular group. He's like, 2-14, let's go. You're out here, 2-14. And he's kind of ushering everybody off the field. He goes, come on, guys, let's practice the process. And that, to me, was like the bang. Tells you what's important to them. Do all the little things right so that the big things take care of themselves. And that is, I think, kind of a very modern, highly effective, much higher than the old school just yell at people approach to sustainable success. Is you need to be on people in a productive way about their habits. And that type of stuff showed up consistently throughout this camp. And so some of it is the tempo. Right? It's the tempo at which they practice. It's the tempo at which they move from drill to drill. It's the purpose they have in everything that they do. Daryl Tapp, when he was with us yesterday, used the word intentionality. There's an intentionality to everything. But there's also a compete level to everything. That was the other kind of fun thing from today and really the entirety of the spring. A couple of examples. I know a lot of people were talking about this yesterday, but they did it again today. They have the two kickers in camp right now. And in order to put them under pressure situations, because you could say, hey, we're going to have them compete, and they could go kick 100 field goals on a side field and not have anybody paying attention but the special teams coach. They don't even have to have the special teams coach. They could have a camera person over there capturing whether or not they go in. They could have Tyler Ott and Tressway snapping and holding, and they could do their own field goal competition and compete while no one's watching. That's not how Dan Quinn does things. That's not how this staff goes about their business. It's not how this organization now goes about their business. No. Your center, on the field where everybody is, And not only the offensive and defensive groups watching from the sideline, no. They are on, not the hashes, because it's a field goal. It'd be a little close. But they're like on the end of the line of scrimmage vertically. So like think of the two wings on the end of field goal, and the O-line and D-line are like lined up there facing each other with the kick happening in the middle of them. And they're hooting and hollering and making noise, and a couple of defensive guys got really into it, and one of them was yelling at the guy whose name is not on his jersey yet, 19. He's like, you got to earn a nameplate, 19. Like, that's how they do it. They're competing. A lot of individual stuff is typically pretty individual, kind of low-key, whatever. Not at Commanders practice these days. I know Keim chronicled yesterday there was a two-man sled drill where they were racing each other to see who could hit the sled first, which, by the way, is also very effective coaching. I'll just go into this for a second, right? If I'm coaching you, Anthony, to be as fast as possible, and I'm like, hey, I want you to go as fast as you can, and I just tell you, I want you to go as fast as you can. You can try. We don't really know, right? Then there's two other ways that I could maybe do that. One, I could go, I need you to beat me. And as long as I'm fast enough as the coach, or I need you to beat him, your teammate, well, now the competitive juices are flowing. You're not thinking about, I have to go as fast as I can. You're just being a competitor, which is good. I can also put you on a stopwatch. That's why, like, as a speed coach or as a strength and conditioning coach who does some work on speed, when I'm having athletes do 10-yard starts, which is like first step acceleration work, which is really, really important in basically every sport, you're on the clock. I'm going to put, like, we can do 10 of them just without a stopwatch, and you might do a solid job, but if I have you constantly trying to beat yourself, you're really going to get geared up. And I'll coach you through on how to get better. Hey, you're grinding too hard. You need you to relax a little bit. Be fast, be free. Like, you can coach that stuff up, but ultimately you want the athlete competing. And so not only is it kind of a mentality of competition, but you're actually getting a better result from the drill of, hey, John Allen, you better beat Deron Payne. Or KJ Henry, you better beat Jamin Davis. And KJ Henry, after he did, apparently yelled, I ain't losing a no safety, which is a funny bit. So you had that. Or, for instance, today, the quarterbacks were throwing, and they put a bucket in the corner of the end zone, like a big trash, not a bucket, a big trash can. And I have video of this that I'll throw up on my YouTube page at Craig Hoffman, on a short. So just subscribe and it'll pop up. I'll try to tweet it out too. But point is, they put the bucket in the corner, and everybody gets a shot. And it's, instead of like, this is an accuracy drill, it's like, hey, first one to get it in wins. And they take turns and they go through, and like Sam Hartman actually went first on one of the rotations, and he got it. And so everyone else had a chance to match. And turns out that on that particular round, Sam Hartman and David Blau, the assistant quarterback's coach, recently retired, who throws a lot in some of the drills where they need 5 footballs thrown and they only have 4 quarterbacks. Blau and Hartman won the drill. And Hartman fake dunked on Jaden, just like jumped up on him and then they threw the other side, and Tavita actually got it. Tavita Pritchard got involved. I really want Cliff to get involved. I want to see if Cliff still got it. But Tavita got in there and was throwing and dunked one. And it's like they're on the 10-yard line, but throwing to the corner of the end zone. That's like a 25, 30-yard throw. Tavita drops one in the literal bucket. And he and Blau are celebrating. And then Tavita looks at all the quarterbacks and he goes, y'all suck. And that's good, friendly competition. You want to make practice exciting. You want to make it so guys don't lament being there. You want to make it so guys are actually pushing to be their best. Add a little competition. It adds some fun. It adds some spice. It adds that extra little bit. And it is a way of life for Dan Quinn. And I, for one, love it. Now, does that mean that they're automatically going to win football games? No. Does it mean that they'll win more than they would if they didn't do this? Yes. And that's the important thing. You can't You can't magically improve your talent. All you can do is get the most out of it, and this is absolutely a way that you get the most out of it. We'll answer some hot questions from the spring when we get back, because I'm sure, Anthony, you have some. I'm sure you have questions for me since I was out there. Plus, Dan Quinn, did he name Jaden Daniels the starter, even though he was the starter all 3 days? You'll hear from DQ as we go. Take Command coming up at 4:30. Linnell stops by later. Never read the comments. We're jam-packed on a Thursday here on The Hoffman Show. Anthony?
Uh, so, hold on. Let me get this one out, please.
Any
Uh,
day now.
so basically, we have a new system with music in it, and I couldn't listen to the song. I tried to like preview. I gotta go talk to Tom about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking this is a different song, um, because it's called Crazy. But I'm not sure who the artist is, and I thought this was the artist, and it ended up being the wrong song and wrong artist. So
Is that Crazy by Aerosmith that was? I think that I'm like,
yeah, it was.
yeah. That's I mean, it's a fine song. It's not meant to insult a classic rock song here. It's just not really the vibe of the show. It's just not really typically the energy that we bring coming out of break. I think that's really important to our show.
Yeah, that was my bad.
So can we just
No more.
you just talk to Tom and figure out what. See, to quote the late great Stu Scott, you see what had happened was.
Yeah, that's exactly what had happened was.
See what had. All right. Believe it or not, even with that music, this is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We stream live on YouTube at the Team 980. There's a good chance on YouTube, because of the way the stream works, you didn't even hear the song, so you're very confused. Crazy by Aerosmith played. It shouldn't have. That's fine. We're going to keep it moving. Moving towards August is now the plan for the Washington Commanders. I guess camp opens late July. Do we have an actual date for that? I'm sure we do. Commanders training camp 2024 will start in. That's OTA's minicamp. That's not the one we want. Sunday, July 30th. So that's the date I'm seeing right now.
That is a long time.
Yeah. It's apparently about 40 something days. So we'll obviously see. I presume it'll continue to be in Ashburn, and they'll keep rolling there. I do wonder if eventually, when it's kind of somewhere down the line, if Harris tries to, whether it's back to Richmond or whether they do something else, how they do it. But for right now, I'd imagine once they get a new practice facility, they'll obviously do it there. But for right now, training camp scheduled to be in Ashburn, starting in late July, as it always does, and. Today was the third straight day of minicamp that Dan Quinn had Jaden Daniels be the guy taking all the snaps with the first team starters on offense, be Jaden Daniels. So Jaden Daniels, QB1, right? We can just do it now. Mitch Tischler, you have the honor, sir.
Early on in camp, Marcus Mariota was taking most of the reps with the ones. As we've gotten a little further in minicamp, it seems Jaden is taking over. In your mind, is Jaden the starter, and do you expect as we get to training camp that he'll get most of the work with the ones?
Well, in true competition, that's why we set it up as we did, to have Marcus have some and Jaden to have some. So no great declarations other than like being true to who we are. As competitors, there's no doubt that Jaden's making unbelievable progress here, and we'll have a really fun camp. But he's earned that opportunity to go compete. We wouldn't have given him those spaces and those times and those reps if he hadn't. But it was really clear that he's put in the work and he was ready to do that. So it was by intention for sure that he was able to do that.
So there's two things that I like here from Dan Quinn. One that I'm extremely minorly annoyed about. The minorly annoyed one is this dude's going to be your starting quarterback. Just say it. But I also 1,000% get why you don't, which is actually something I like. So there's a small petty part of me that's just like, come on. But also, you do want to make it a competition still. You do want to not just say like, hey, Jaden, when you show up, you've got the job. Not that Jaden's the type of guy that I think would, I don't think that would change anything. And that's actually why Jaden is Jaden, right? Like that's why he's the number 2 pick, is because from like a work ethic, from a whatever standpoint, like he is a guy that you can really trust to actually do the things that he's supposed to do no matter what. He sees himself as a rookie, not as a franchise savior. He knows he's got to put in the work. But at the same time, you don't want to get in camp, get into more on 11 on 11 when there's pads on. Not that he's going to get hit, but like when there's a real rush and all of a sudden, it's a little bit more real and he struggles and you're like, oh God, we already said he's the starter and we don't actually think he's ready yet. So while every single piece of evidence right now suggests that Jaden Daniels should get, and they might even open with him as the starter. And then if he struggles, maybe they work Mariota in, or maybe they do every couple of days, Mariota works in, and they can spin it as, we just want to make sure Marcus is prepared, like Jaden, whatever. We'll see who starts the first preseason game, all that stuff. So there's a lot of data points still to be collected. But at the end of the day, there's kind of two things that are happening here. One, Jaden is performing way better than expected. Not that I thought he would, be terrible or anything. He's 23 years old. Like that older playerness was something that was appealing to them. And obviously he's just more mature than a younger guy might be and is able to translate his game really well. He's got great habits. He kind of treated his senior year at LSU like a pro and developed this routine. Like there's a lot of good stuff about Jaden that made you think he could come in and be okay off the jump. But he has been better than expected. And again, I know some of you think that I loved Drake May in the draft and I'm just trying to bash Jaden or make myself sound right. To be very clear, he's been better than they expected. Dan Quinn explicitly said that today. Like he kind of chuckled at one point in an answer because he was just like, yeah, this dude's ahead of where you think he would be. Like he's kind of ahead of almost where you want him to be. Like he's way out there, which is awesome. And hopefully he stays there. And he's just up we go. There'll be bumps along the way. It's how it works. Nobody has a perfect career. But big time stuff from Jaden Daniels. The other side of it, though, is that Marcus Mariota hasn't been, Marcus Mariota's been worse than expected. And that is, and very specific ways have been worse than expected. So we'll talk more about that next when Logan Paulson and I chat you hear our chat from Take Command about the quarterbacks. I don't want to just say the same thing and then play a conversation when we talk about it more in depth in 5 minutes. So we'll get into that in a moment. But I do think it's an interesting thing for DQ that goes back to the very core of who they are, which is they want to compete for everything, and they're going to make Jaden Daniels compete for this, even if in the back of their mind, just like in the draft process, they knew in the back of their mind, seemingly from go, Adam Peters was like, I really like this Daniels kid. He's probably going to be the guy. But you go through the process, and then as long as your mind isn't changed by new information, cool, we were right all along. But you don't know what you don't know, and so you go through it. Anthony, we can do. Well, do you how many questions do you have for me off the heels of training camp here? Because we got Take Command's a one segmenter, if you will. So we could do some burning questions at 4:45 if you want.
Okay.
But we have an awkward 90 seconds worth of time.
I mean, I can ask you one real quick then.
Do you have anything that's quarterback adjacent?
Quarterback adjacent. I mean, I would more so just. I mean, I seem to believe that JD's probably going to be the starter. So it's more so like, what do you expect him to do this off time? Like, are you expecting him to, get up with some receivers? We've seen. I would hope so.
Yeah, he said he was actually asked about this yesterday, and he said he's like, I'm gonna stay in football mode, which I hope he takes like a week or two, because DQ talked about this today. The rhythm for a rookie is brutal, man. You finish your college season, you go immediately into combine prep, you do the combine. After the combine's in some ways worse, because then you have to do all the visits. And so you're flying around the country. You're trying to work out because you still have to get ready for your pro day. You get ready for your pro day. You have your pro day. Then you have more visits. And then you get drafted. you are, especially if you're a top guy, like you have all these media responsibilities and kind of, hey, I'm a high draft pick stuff that you got to do. Also, you're trying to now like at least find a temporary place to live. And then maybe this time of year, maybe Jaden Daniels is spending some extra time in the DMV going house hunting because you just doing what you can to get by because you're a week after the draft, you're in rookie minicamp. You're trying to pack up all your stuff at home, so you're flying back and forth from home to your team. You have rookie minicamp into veteran stuff, OTAs, then ultimately through mandatory minicamp, which is now, and now you have like 40 days until you're in the season. So for him, he's like, I'm going to go back to my quarterback coach and be in Southern California and be at home and work out there. But I hope he takes like a week to just do nothing. Just chill, man. Let your whole nervous system reset. But when he gets back, be sharp, be focused, be ready to go, be in shape. And from a physical conditioning standpoint, this is an important 6-week stretch for guys because you do have to be in shape for OTAs, but training camp's a different level. And, you know, off-season workouts are not easy. In fact, they're some of the hardest workouts you'll do all year because you don't have to save yourself for practicing games. And so it's a critical stretch for all these guys to put in that really good work, then back off the last couple of days, but really sharp, or the last couple of weeks, but really sharpen the knife, be firing on all cylinders, and be ready for training camp. Like you're training to be ready for training camp this time of year. And that's it's a critically important stretch of the summer. So that's Jaden, but it's also everybody else. When we get back, more conversation about Jaden Daniels and the Marcus Mariota side of it. How does Logan see the quarterback situation and his response to Dan Quinn not naming Jaden Daniels the starter coming out of the spring, even though every time there's been a QB1 called the last 3 days of mandatory minicamp, Jaden Daniels has been the guy under center, or at least behind it, in the gun. Plus, more burning questions from Anthony on training camp or minicamp later. Mike Leslie joins us from Dallas as we switch gears to the NBA Finals at 5. Plenty to come. Loaded up on the Hoffman Show here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And right now, I'll give you a little preview of Take Command. Actually, I guess it's not a preview. I'll give you a little segment of Take Command because it's live. If you want the full podcast, about 35 minutes of reaction. Logan and I did this live earlier today on YouTube, and now it is in your podcast feeds. But you don't have to go anywhere because the quarterback section we give to you right now. Anthony, am I hitting the magic button or are you hitting the magic button? You're hitting the magic button. Anthony, please hit the magic button.
It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
What's up, what's happening? Welcome in. It's a live edition of Take Command after the Commanders have wrapped up their spring program. I'm Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen. You made your way back.
Made my way back. Here we are.
We're in the bubble.
In the bubble, yeah. It's not too bad in here, actually.
It's not too bad. I've done a lot of talking in here the last couple of days.
Yeah. I was watching the podcast from afar, watching your show, however you guys did that setup, you and Will. And you look very nice in here. It was with Kime. That's right. With Kime.
Yeah, Kime. We were sitting on that side of the table.
Yeah.
This is actually the table.
Yeah. This is the same table.
This is the same table, but I've decided that I wanted the field behind us today instead of the white tarp.
Yeah, and these cool barriers.
Yeah. Which they put up to block so we couldn't see walkthrough and then never had walkthrough. That's a true story, boys and girls. Obviously, the offseason is over. We're going to talk about what we saw today, day 3 of minicamp, and we will talk about what Dan Quinn said afterwards. And I think, obviously, the biggest story, Logan, is Jaden Daniels continues to look really, really good. Dan Quinn afterwards declined to name him the starting quarterback, even though he was QB1 exclusively all 3 days of minicamp. And that was kind of my takeaway earlier in the week. I was kind of like, how many days in a row does he have to be QB1 before we say he's QB1? But they obviously can mix it up later on. And Marcus did have some days stacked earlier on in the spring. But I think if you look at the springs of the two quarterbacks, it would be kind of silly not to have Jaden Daniels be your starting quarterback because he was the better quarterback throughout the spring.
Yeah, I think part of it is just want to keep him motivated. I think that's really is what it comes down to. It's just like, hey, man, we're still in a competition. We still want you to keep pushing. We still want you to keep kind of aspiring to that next level of production, especially at this level. Everyone's been talking about how he's here at 5:45. That's great. But does that wane? Does that focus deteriorate at all if you're not hungering and striving for something? So I think it's good. I think it's also you want to see how they perform, both guys, when it is a competition, when there's a little bit of pressure, and you can kind of simulate that as a coach, and they might in the building know something different. But I think all of this stuff, I know fans get really frustrated with it. I've had a lot of conversation with fans about it. And to me, it's appropriate. Like, keep them in a competition, keep them working at it, and keep the pressure up a little bit, because you want to know, how the guy who's playing the most important position on the field for you handles pressure and handles a little bit of adversity. So
no doubt. And the other thing is you look at how they treated the process of drafting him, right? And they, Adam Peters is big on, we don't make a decision until we have to make a decision. And there's no deadline, because what happens if you name him the starter and then he has a really poor camp and Marcus turns it on in August and you're like, maybe this kid could use a couple of weeks here. You don't want to predetermine anything. So as unlikely as that feels right now based off the trajectory, there's no deadline, so why make a decision? With that said, if we look at just, instead of looking at it through the lens of evaluation to make a decision, look at it through the lens of just pure evaluation. Sure. What did you make of Jaden today? And I think one of the things that stood out to me was how he performed in the red zone, because that is an area where the offense has struggled a little bit because it's hard to score down there. But he was excellent today in that period. Yeah,
I mean, I thought he looked really sharp. I think there was 2 kind of red zone-ish periods. One was a 7-on-7 and one was a team period. In the team period, to be fair to the defense, they were running a lot of man coverage. And so you could tell that was a point of emphasis for them. And by extension, Cliff Kingsbury's running a lot of man beaters and stuff that puts you defensively in a really hard spot. You're getting in tight bunches, you're getting the 4-man overloads, you're shifting, you're motioning, you're challenging the communication. So I thought, obviously, in that period, Jaden looked really good. I thought there was a period where they were working a little bit more zone principle. B-Rob catches 2 passes up the seam. Love both of those play designs. You're just getting a 4 verts, but you're just getting into it with different personnel, different alignments, and great job by Jaden hitting those throws. But it did feel like the defense, I don't want to say some days we're saying, it's an offensive day or it's a defensive day. Today felt more of like an offensive day. It felt like we're working on our cover 2, we're working on our cover 3. We're not going to disguise a ton. We're working on our man coverage. And, anytime as an offensive player, you have you're running one of these 3 coverages, you can tell the difference. And other days that I've been out here earlier in the process, you kind of say, man, this coverage is really well disguised, or, hey, this is quarters. And it looks like, man, they're stemming to quarters. Today was a lot, I'd say, much more straightforward. And I think the production was much better, but that's what you expect from a guy like Jaden Daniels. And again, like, that's not to take anything away from Jaden.
He's still got to make the throws, and those throws to B-Rob with the seam are tough throws. They require some velocity to squeeze it over
some
a guy
touch.
and to make sure that a safety crashing down can't get there in time. But also, like you said, the touch to get that arc, that trajectory just right, and he was tremendous. I also liked the stack of plays that Cliff used on the first of the 2 touchdowns. They were in, I think it was 11 personnel, and they're going hurry up, and they change personnel. All of a sudden, they're in 22.
Yeah.
And the defense is kind of trying to find everyone because you got tight ends split out. You got Austin Eckler going in motion as a wide receiver. B-Rob's in the backfield. All of a sudden, he sneaks up the seam. He's got a great matchup on the linebacker. So the use, you see it, and it's some of the stuff that we've wanted to see in the past from this offense, and we thought we would see a lot more of last year, is they have so many guys that are versatile. They have so many guys that can line up different places, and it very much seems like Cliff Kingsbury is intent on using them in those different places, as opposed to a bunch of, hey, can't that guy do that we've had the last couple of years.
And I think there was there's a fun element to play design, like when you watch a Kyle Shanahan offense, or when you watch kind of the spread single wing that they're running down in Miami, or some of those concepts, or even when you see a good high school or college play that are all over Instagram and TikTok and all that stuff. There's something really sweet about it. Like, the timing's good, the motion hits just right, the spacing's good, the guys are distributing the field well. And I felt like with that 22 play you're talking about, the next play that they ran with 4 verts where they shifted to it, there was this crispness, which was so great. And they were just like, it was just like, oh, that was so well designed, that was so well executed, the timing was excellent. All of those things were just checked on the boxes. And I know it's early off season, and like I said, the defense was kind of in some simpler stuff today, but man, it's really hard to execute football plays like that. And to see that multiple times in a practice, from the quarterback to the receiver to the spacing of the concept, I thought was really cool. And so I came out of this practice being like, man, like, that's cool. That's good offensive coaching. That's good offensive enforcement, meaning like the details. Everyone's on their details. And I just was like, you got to tip your hat to Cliff after a day like today, because you can tell that group's coming together. And again, there's still a lot of work to do, obviously. But it was, I thought, a really nice kind of checking of the box in terms of schematically what they're doing.
No doubt. The other part of the quarterback discussion is Marcus Mariota. And I do think that part of my, hey, it really looks like Jaden Daniels already kind of won the starting job, is I don't think Marcus had a great spring. And, not that I expected Marcus Mariota to be incredible. Marcus Mariota is Marcus Mariota, whatever that means. But there's some stuff from, a veteran nature that you would expect from him in terms of when they run some of the situational football, him to be in control of the situations. Yeah. Or there was a play yesterday where it's actually the crazy Quan interception you may have seen on Instagram.
Crazy play.
But they heat him up, and he lofts the ball out there, and Quan makes a hell of a play. But it's the kind of play that you're like, really, as a quarterback in a game, because you just kind of there's no velocity, there's no urgency on the throw. You loft the ball over the middle of the field, and especially if DBs know that a blitz is on, they're going to be able to jump it. And so I do think that part of the equation is Daniels has been better, not just than we expected, but Dan Quinn at the podium was he's been a little bit better than I expected.
Right.
And he fell in love with him and drafted him number 2.
Right.
But I do think Mariota he's been a great mentor, and they were hoping probably that he'd be a little bit more than just a great mentor.
No, I think that's right. And I think, we talked about it a little bit on the field today. There is a nervousness or a nervous energy, let's say that, because I think, Marcus does some good things. He's made some nice throws. He's made some good plays. I'm not trying to distract from that anyway, but there is a kind of, when Jaden's out there, I think back to when I played with Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan's feet are very active, but his eyes are very consistent. You can tell he is seeing what the defense is presenting. You can tell he's seeing the concept well. You can tell he's seeing the space well, and he's dictating to the defense. When Jaden's out there, there's shades of that. You know what I'm saying? He's not there all the way,
as you would expect.
But he understands this is dead. I'm going to work to this progression, and my feet are going to take me there, and my eyes are going to take me there. That's very consistent. And when Marcus is out there, again, he's made some really nice plays. He had a really nice zone read today, which was awesome. But one of the things about him, his feet are never settled, his eyes are kind of all over the place. And then I'm always questioning when I watch, not always, but I find myself consistently questioning, how well are you seeing the space and the concept? And that's not what starters do, to your point, and right. I think that's kind of what I'm getting at there. It's like, yes, can he play? Can he win you some games? Is he going to play a valuable role on this team if Jaden does get hurt? 100%. But I do think if you just look at the consistency that Jaden's brought every single day, in terms of the footwork, the vision, the manipulating of the defense, the understanding of the defense, all the chips kind of lean in that direction. And to your point, like, those are starting caliber traits. Now, he's still young. We talked about how you want to keep that competition going. But I think when you just compare them one-to-one, it's like, who would I rather be starting for my team today? It's probably Jaden Daniels. But again, There's still a lot of time. You don't want to back yourself into a corner, all those things. But.
Right. And I think the fact that it is so definitive by June 13th, frankly, it was definitive before June 13th, is noteworthy. I'll put it that way. Last piece of the quarterback discussion as we look ahead to training camp. I feel like I want to see, if you're Dan Quinn and you're thinking, all right, what do we want to see from Daniels / how do we get him ready? Because really at that point, it's about that, right? It's not about evaluation and testing. If I think a lot of us are, where it's like, it's pretty clear what direction we're going to wind up going here.
Yeah.
So how do we actually get him ready to play NFL football? I do want to see what happens when he's flustered. And I'm probably of course you want to go through installs. There's a lot of standard stuff that goes without saying, but just to make sure that people are not like, well, I'll say it. But you talk about days where the offense or the defense can win. If I'm Dan Quinn, at some point in August, I'm dialing up a day where he can't win.
Yeah.
And I want to see how he handles it, because he's so inflappable, which is a phenomenal trait. And if he continues to just be that on a day where he can't get anything going, which is because the deck is stacked against him, like, that just says it says so much about who he is and his competitive character. And I think he's got that in him. Like, I actually think it would be hard to fluster him.
Yeah, and I think they've done versions of that or periods of that. Like we talked about that. I think it was 3 or 4 practices ago now, where they had they did quarters in the low red, and in a 7-on-7 period. And basically the windows are like non-existent. There's nowhere to go with the football. You don't really have your quarters beaters up. The offense is still kind of in its early stages. The timing isn't there the same way that it was today, for example. So I say to myself, they've done that, and he's consistently just kind of bounced back, whether it's within the practice or the next practice we get to see him. Like, again, he's made mistakes. He's had tough days. There's days like, for example, 2-3 practices ago, like when he misreads the coverage and kind of, is a little unsettled, gets the ball out. He just seems to manage it really, really well. I think the thing that I want to see probably more than anything is the more 11-man football stuff. That's what I want to see. Because one of the big knocks on him is he doesn't do well coming out of college, obviously. And I think there's degrees of this. But it's how he does when it's not a super clean pocket, when he's being pressured, when the pocket's not super defined, like, what does he look like? And one of the things about LSU's offensive line, there's definitely 2 draftable guys next year, one that's probably going to go in the first round, right? So that
might be
level,
a top 5 pick, their left tackle.
that level of talent obviously isn't here in terms of offensive line, because it's nowhere in the NFL. Like, that's just a fact of life. So I think, like, that's the thing I'm really excited to see when training camp comes around, is how, in these joint practices, in the team blitz periods, does he stay in the pocket and deliver these footballs the way that you have to at the NFL level?
Yeah, definitely. All right, the full episode of Take Command is available now. Talked a lot more about the defense, the offensive line, and it is available in your podcast feed or on demand on YouTube at Craig Hoffman at the Team 980. Click on our live videos tab, as this was a live edition from the bubble after minicamp today. When we get back, some burning questions from Anthony, some quick hitters, and then Mike Leslie joins us from Dallas talking NBA Finals in the 5 o'clock hour. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Never read the comments. It's going to be an interesting one coming up at 5:30. But right now, Anthony, you have a couple more burning questions coming out of Commanders minicamp for me, since I was there, as we head into the 40 days of no football summer. The desert that is.
No.
I'm not that mad about it this year. There's basketball stuff. There's plenty of stuff to talk about. We got to do some NBA draft stuff, bro.
Yes.
Next week, we got to hit that hard.
A lot of stuff.
It helps when the guest you're trying to book is not in Australia, but we'll figure that out.
That too.
Yeah. What you got for me on Manders?
First things first. Well, I want to talk about the defensive backfield, but before we get there, I'm going to talk about the linebacker room, and I'm going to talk about Jamin Davis.
I've heard of him.
How do you think he'll be deployed? I guess in the system, because we've seen him line up at DN. We've seen him as a traditional linebacker. Like, we've seen him all over, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that's how you're going to see him. I think their willingness to move guys around isn't limited to the defensive backfield. Like, moving Quan around isn't the only guy that's going to move, or Chin, or whoever. Jamin's going to move around. Luvu's going to move around. They're going to find out what these guys do well and try to put him in positions to do that stuff. Injuries are always a factor. They're going to cross-train guys. Like, Jamin's going to have to know how to play linebacker in this defense. He's not just going to become a third-down edge rusher. And he's not – I don't think he's a good enough edge setter as a D lineman for as good as he is against the run often as a linebacker. I don't think as an edge he's a guy you necessarily want to play on first and second down. So he's probably going to be a role player. His role might be really important. Hopefully he develops as a pass rusher. But I think in general, Anthony, I wouldn't take too much out of the spring, because I think this was an experimental time. Like, I think if they could have done beyond the fact that every football coach would always rather do everything behind closed doors and they hate having to let us in, I think especially this time of year, if they could have done all that stuff behind closed doors and experimented and not had to worry about us discussing, oh, this guy might do this guy might do that. Not even because they don't want opponents to know about it. Because they don't want, if they could issue a practice report of, hey, here's where everybody lined up, but you don't get to see it, they'd rather do that. Because when you're experimenting, when you're trying stuff, it's not always going to go great. And so I think this was an experimental period for them, and Davis had some good rushes. He obviously had some that weren't, and he's learning essentially a new thing, and he's going to get chances to do that once they get pads on too, because they're still experimenting. You can try all you want around the cones and around the bags, but different world when dudes get your hands on you and you got pads on. So I think eventually my guess is he'll do some edge rushing, and he'll be a backup linebacker and not play a ton, but that's my guess.
All right, and probably one last question. Between the offensive line and the defensive line, would you say, two-parter, would you say those are the two units that you are most worried or concerned about?
No.
Okay, what would your
I think corner is somewhere in there.
What did I say?
You said O-line, D-line.
Oh, no. My bad. I meant to say O-line and cornerback. My bad.
Oh, yeah. Because, D-line I have, it's not concerns about, but,
we can work around that.
Their edge stuff is just really, unless Luvu and Davis turn into, edge rushing monsters on third downs, they just don't have the type of edge rusher that elite defensive lines have, as much as they have elite interior guys. And maybe that winds up working out. Maybe because they're so good inside, they can figure it out. But I have concerns there. I think, corner and O-line.
That's what I meant.
And again,
to say.
I don't think O-line's corner's more concerning for me than O-line.
Yeah.
Because I think you can hide the O-line. I think they've upgraded it in some important places. I just don't know who's going to be on it, but I feel like they'll figure something out that's workable. Corner, at some point, you got to cover somebody, and I just don't know if Benjamin St-Juste and Michael Davis and Emmanuel Forbes are up to that. I think they'll be better than they were last year because the coaching is going to be a lot better and the communication's a lot better, and all that stuff. But are some receivers, and especially in a division that's got CeeDee Lamb and A.J. Brown, and some other receivers on this schedule. I mean, their first 4 games, they see, Mike Evans and Marvin Harrison Jr., and they got dogs that they're going to see in the first quarter of the season. We're going to find out. We're going to find out just how good they can coach these guys up and just how bad the coaching was last year in terms of what kind of talent we got in the secondary in Washington. So we'll get to some more big questions as we go. Of course, we'll be talking about many of these topics all summer long, and eventually we'll get some answers in training camp coming up starting in late July. And then everyone wants to know everything all at once, and that's my least favorite time of year. So I'm going to go to the Olympics and let y'all take care of it. Really, that is my least favorite time of year. Because you want stuff to matter, and then you're just in a million training camp practices, and you're like, can we at least get a preseason game in? So we'll cross that bridge when it comes. Speaking of things that matter, the NBA Finals. It's the most important thing in the sport for the NBA. It's where the champion is crowned, and it sure looks like it's going to be the Boston Celtics. So what's the mood in Dallas today after Luka fouled out with over 4 minutes remaining in a finals game? Mike Leslie's got the pulse of the town from WFAA TV down there. Our good pal joins us next here on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. Never read the comments coming up in a little bit, but right now it is time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
To Dallas we go. The NBA Finals, 3-0 Celtics on top after a bizarre Game 3, which saw Luka Doncic ejected in the fourth quarter. I guess fouled out in the fourth quarter. Mike Leslie, my buddy, my pal, who works for the ABC affiliate down there, WFAA, is with us. And Mike, I'm sure you are aware by now that you were in the background of Brian Windhorst's epic rant that went viral on SVP last night. How quickly were you made aware of you as a part of what is now an immortalized internet moment? How quickly were you aware that you were in the background of that?
Craig, I swear to God, right now, did not
what?
know that. I had no idea. And I even was watching it with Jonah Javad, who I know you know, one of my colleagues here at Channel 8. And clearly we weren't looking at it closely enough to notice who was in the background.
Because both of you dorks were in the background.
Right now.
Jonah's on camera. You're getting ready. How, Mike, what?
No idea till right this moment. Did not look at the video that closely.
You're over his right shoulder. You and Jonah both are over his right shoulder. Because I was like, oh, that's Jonah. I was like, oh, Mike's there in the background too. I guess they were both doing stuff last night. All right. Well, the clueless Mike Leslie. I'm just kidding. Mike Leslie is with us. He's very, very smart, even if he's not always.
That is how closely I am covering this series too.
Well, no, you're locked in on the important stuff. I'm over here doing skits and bits because I'm the radio guy. That's what I do now. What is like the folks that do my job in Dallas down there, our colleagues at 105.3 The Fan and everybody at the Ticket, et cetera, et cetera. If anybody still is doing a live show at my old station at ESPN, sure, them too. What's the vibe from like the fan base and kind of the opinion world on what happened last night with Luka Doncic? Either the foul calls themselves, his behavior. What's the mood of the city as the Mavs fall down 3-0 in that game?
Well, I said it earlier today that walking into the arena, it kind of felt like we were at a wake and tomorrow's the funeral. It just the vibes are not great down here. Listen, half of the press conference today for Luka, for Jason Kidd, even a little bit for Kyrie Irving, kind of asking about Luka. The whole ethos of the day was, all right, this is the Mavs version of MJ losing to the Pistons or LeBron's 07 run with the Cavs when they got swept by the Spurs or whatever. This is, all right, here's your first foray. Here's your first opportunity on this stage. It doesn't generally tend to go well for anybody. We'll see you again either in 12 months or in 3 years or whatever the time frame shall be, and now you'll have the experience and maybe you'll be better next time. Like that discussion is already beginning because everybody's just assuming that this thing is over, and let's be honest, it is. It would take one, obviously a historic comeback, but there's nothing about this series that points to, oh, well, if they could just tweak this or just get like, is there a thread to grasp at? Like, this thing is over. So that's where kind of everybody is, that, all right, this thing's done. Great playoff run. And I've already heard a lot of that discussion, and deservedly so, that, hey, look at it in its totality. Incredible run, beat the 1 seed Thunder, beat Minnesota when you didn't have home court advantage in any of these 3 series, got to the finals earlier than anybody expected, but everybody's already very much aware of and not accepting of, but just staring at the reality that this thing's over.
So there's not any any's too big of a word here, because I'm sure that there are some delusional Mavs fans, many of whom I probably interacted with back in the day, who are like, I don't know, but like there's no prevailing sentiment, no one making the argument that they found something late in that game where they were able to come back that could at least get them to Game 5, and then who knows, Porzingis, he's out, like the series has changed. There's none of that. It's just they're hoping this is a moment that is looked at as the low point for a future rebound already.
Yeah, I think you're right to say that I can't use the word any. because there are certainly, I think, some Mavs fans, and there's obviously, I think, some sentiment within the Mavs locker room, because there has to be, that, hey, let's just focus on Game 4 and let's get one, and then we'll go from there. That obviously has to be the approach. That has to be the mentality. And Luka did, in response to a couple of different questions, including one from me today that was kind of forward-focused and, all right, how do you improve your game? How do you fill some of the holes that may be still in your game? How do you get better for next time around? And he did he answered the question, but then circled back around to say, hey, but this thing's not over yet. It's 1st to 4. Like, we're going to go out there and play tomorrow night and try and make something happen here. So the Mavs still have that thread. They're still trying. Jason Kidd made the decision today. We're not going to practice. We're going to focus on film, because that's where we need our energy right now to be able to make improvements and be ready to make something happen in Game 4. So the team is certainly still in that mindset. But I think by and large, the fan base is going, okay, great run. Let's try this again 12 months from now.
Mike Leslie, WFAA in Dallas, is with us. Luka, I know, said today he's going to try to have fun and not let the refs get to him. This has long been a discussion, and all jokes aside about you being in the background, unbeknownst to you, of the Windhorse rant. But, like, Brian is right. People have talked to him in Dallas about the whining with the refs before, and it clearly hasn't gotten to him. And, you know, the message of not to do it hasn't gotten to him. They got to him in the biggest of moments last night. What did Luka have to say today, and what did Jason Kidd, his coach, have to say about it?
You know, there's some maturity that has to happen here. That is the reality of the matter. We have seen him mature. We have seen growth in that regard. It's not like he's still the 18, 19-year-old kid that came into the league. He's improved from there, but there is still another level or two that he has to reach if he's going to become the force that he can be in this league, even on this stage. We've seen him take a huge leap this year into now that premier upper tier of the league, maybe top player on the planet, top 2 or 3, certainly in that conversation, going to be one of the favorites for the MVP next year, obviously was a finalist this season. He has now put himself in that upper crust, even without attaining these ultimate levels of maturity that he needs to find. But he still far too frequently gets himself just embroiled in the nonsense that you just can't get wrapped up in, especially as it pertains to the officials. There were moments, not even just moments, there were several moments in the game last night where he is in the middle of plays and still arguing with the officials and trying to make his point, like pounding his dribble at midcourt and barking at the officials as somebody's trying to guard him, and he's just got an arm bar to keep him at his distance so that he can finish making his point to the official and then start attacking the basket. Like, what are we doing here? He's an otherworldly talent, and he wouldn't be leading his team to the finals if that weren't the case. But there has to be that 1 or 2 more clicks worth of maturity, level-headedness, just go play ball. And he talked about it in the Thunder series, that he needed to find his way back to having fun out there. And in that circumstance, it wasn't too late for them to turn the thing around, win a game up in Oklahoma City in Game 5 and take a 3-2 series lead, come back home and close that thing out. At this point, it's very likely too late in this series to change the ultimate outcome. But there's a lot of things about the way that he approaches the game from a mental perspective that have to grow.
Is there, Mike Leslie is our guest, WFAA TV in Dallas. Is there someone in the organization that's kind of his guy, whether it's a vet, an assistant coach, a front office type? Like, what is the infrastructure to try to get this out of him, or do they need to bring someone in to be the Udonis Haslem, if you will, for Luka?
Yeah, listen, I mean, there's definitely guys that he trusts and leans on, God Shamgod, DA, some of their assistant coaches that are, his guys that he really they're his buddies. They are his pregame warm-up counterparts. These guys that that have his ear, that are trying to put him in the right mental framework to be able to approach the game. But it does kind of feel like somebody that has big-time skins on the wall. I'm going to come in and maybe not affiliated with the organization, come in and say, dude, this has got to change. If that, I know the clip that went viral of MJ walking up to him and dapping him up at the All-Star game. And there's a relationship there, obviously, with him being a Jordan athlete. Like, somebody of that kind of caliber, I think, needs to go to him and say, listen, we all know you can ball, but this doesn't work. This part of who you are as a player, nobody's trying to steal your competitive fire. That obviously is part of why you are great. But channel it in this direction and just leave the officials alone already. Because on some level, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, obviously officials are out there to be the unbiased arbiters of the game, but they are human beings too. And if you spend 48 minutes of a basketball game barking at them, they are not going to like you. And when it's just human nature. When it comes down to 50-50 call, even if they're not consciously thinking it, probably seeps in from time to time.
No doubt. The idea that could be MJ, considering what he did to officials, is genuinely hilarious.
Fair.
Dude, he was Michael Jordan. He got to do whatever he wanted. But, oh, my God,
yes,
he
did.
absolutely crushed officials back in the day. Last but not least, for my pal Mike Leslie, joining us from Dallas, where he is a TV anchor down for the ABC affiliate in Big D. If they lose this series, which is the overwhelmingly likely outcome, of course, it would be the first time an NBA team ever came back from 3-0 if they did. Like, you think they just run this back? Because they're in the finals, and they had a pretty good formula to get here. And this is a team that really has only been together since the trade deadline. Obviously, you're welcome for your former Wizard that's required to play in the finals, apparently, the last 6 years, and Daniel Gafford. But Lively, like, he'll be going into year 2. He's only a rookie. But I think there's enough for proof of concept that the Luka Kyrie thing can work, that losing to a Celtics team that if they win game 4 will go 80-20 on the year. Like, there's no failure in that, or very limited failure in that. But teams have broken up good teams before because they fall one step short. Where's the Mavs front office at if this ends the way we think it's going to end?
See, I'm with you on this. There's a lot of frustration amongst Mavs fans right now, and I get it because you get to this stage and you want to finish the job. This is a historically good Celtics team. They are fantastic. They have been the best team in basketball all year. They have had advanced analytics that say they are one of the top, take your pick, 6, 8, 10, 12 best teams in the history of the league all year long. And to your point, yes, 80-20, which is a bonkers number if they win game 4. Losing to that team, even in a sweep, you'd prefer it not to be in a sweep, of course, but losing to that team, as everyone else in these playoffs has in lopsided fashion, either a sweep or 4-1, is not reason to say, all right, well, clearly this doesn't work. Kyrie was very clear in his final answer in his press conference today. He's not going anywhere. He's comfortable here. He likes it here. He feels like there is real potential here. He and Luka clearly get along very, very well. That duo is obviously your main thrust of what this thing is going to be going forward. But yes, this nucleus, who they've been for the last basically just 4 or 5 months since the trade deadline, basically 4 months since the trade deadline, That's all they've had, and yet here they are in the NBA Finals. There is a lot to build from here. Exactly what that looks like, yeah, there's probably going to be some tweaking, but I think the fundamental elements of it, the P.J. Washingtons, the Derek Lively's, the Daniel Gaffords, the Derek Jones Jr., these guys made profound impacts all through these playoffs, were big parts of why the Mavs defense, until they came up against this Boston team, was outstanding in these playoffs. And even against a really, really good Boston offense, was pretty good in this series. The issue really hasn't been the Mavs defense as much as they still haven't cracked 100 points in this series, because for 2 games, only Luka was scoring. And then last night, only Luka and Kyrie until that final stretch. There's a lot to build on here. So, yeah, I think they bring back the vast majority of this nucleus and try and go at it again.
Bonus question, because you brought him up, and I'm just curious real quick. Kyrie, his reputation has healed because he's playing basketball and people enjoy watching him play basketball, myself included, despite the fact that, oh my God, 2 years ago, what in the hell was he doing? Right, between the anti-Semitic stuff that he shared, and then some of the defense of it, and but also just the basketball stuff. Like, he blew up multiple teams. He blew up Cleveland. He blew up Boston. He blew up Brooklyn. There are thoughts that he has matured, and like that was some symptoms of him just being a younger person trying to find himself in the world, and that he has surrounded himself with people. Is that true? Like, what's the skinny on Kyrie? Like, is he still the same dude who's just playing basketball and not talking, so we forget about the other stuff and just enjoy the hell out of him playing basketball? Or do you think that he's actually like a changed person in some profound way, where he has grown up and matured over the last couple of years as he's found a home in Dallas?
I do honestly think that there is some maturity that has happened, some growth that has happened, and I do think he is comfortable here. I think they've done, as an organization, a really good job of making him comfortable here. I don't think that you can absolve him of the things that he did and said 2 and 3 years ago, especially some of the more serious things like you're talking about with the anti-Semitism. That is still something that, has to hang somewhere in the corner of how we view Kyrie Irving. But, and this is probably the 3rd time I've referenced this now in the last couple of weeks, I saw something from Rachel Nichols that I thought was really on point about Kyrie Irving, which is to say, we can't wipe away those things that he did and said. But all we ever ask of people, even when they're in the middle of those moments, when they're doing things that are unconscionably dumb or insensitive or whatever the case may be, what we ask of these people is growth.
Yep.
We have actually seen that here. And there has to be some credit for that on this back end of it, because we have seen that, and he has been able to grow and also, to your point, just focus in on ball. And we've seen the results of that. Frankly, we saw him get a little bit distracted from it in games 1 and 2 in Boston, and we saw the results there, because all of a sudden he had the shamrock on the rear end of his pants during shoot-around earlier in the week, and he's talking about after game 1, I thought these guys were going to be louder tonight. Like, he started egging the crowd on a little bit, and look how he shot the basketball in Boston. So he's not I don't know that he's 1,000% healed, but he's a huge, huge step way better than it was in Boston and in Brooklyn. And if they can continue to make him comfortable, and if he can continue that growth process, I do think that the Kyrie we've seen over the course of the last 6 months or so become a key piece of a finals run team can continue here in Dallas.
That's really good perspective, and I'm glad you could share that with us, and glad I asked the question, because you're 100% right. Like, people make mistakes. That is part of life. We've all done it, of varying varieties and severities. And actually,
he made some severe ones.
Yeah. And he, of basketball and non-basketball varieties, severe within the context of basketball, blowing up your team, and not in terms of the other stuff. But all you can ask is to do better moving forward and show some actual remorse and apology, and if Kyrie's done some of that stuff, like that's great. Because man, watching that dude play basketball is really fun, and I'm glad that he got it going last night. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like there's many more times we're gonna get to watch him this season. Mike Leslie, WFAA TV down in Dallas. Go watch the Windhorse clip again so you can see yourself in the background.
I'm going to text Jonah as soon as we get off the phone.
Actually, just put the three of us in a group text. I want the reaction. I want to know if Jonah knows. All right, I'll talk to you. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
See you, dude.
Mike Leslie, everybody. Anthony, so just so you know, so Mike and I crossed in Dallas when I worked there. Jonah, who is Mike's colleague at WFAA, we interned together at ESPN back in 2012. And so I'm watching that Windhorse clip this morning that went viral, and I'm like, that's Jonah, which is not surprising that he's behind Brian Windhorst in the clip. But then behind Jonah, I'm like, oh, that's Mike. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll have one of them on today. And then I asked Mike at the start that whether he knew or not, and he's like, no, right now.
Yeah, I don't know what rock he's been under.
How do you know? How do you watch that and not be like, oh, that's me in the background?
Yeah, well, that too. Oh, so he probably did. So he did see the clip. He just
did
realize
see the clip. He didn't
that
realize
he was in the background.
that he and Jonah were in the background.
Oh wow.
Apparently, he and Jonah watched it together.
Yeah, I'm watching it right now.
All right. Coming up next, never read the comments, and hopefully I will get a group text from Mike with Jonah in it, and we'll see if Jonah knew. What a time, what a time. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. I got to say, it looks like it's a grand time out in the bullpen today. And are those Grant's little ones or Danny's little ones? I think those are Danny's kids out there.
Those are Danny's kids for sure.
Yeah, Danny's, cause yeah, Grant's are younger. Danny's two boys are here, and they are just constantly playing catch. And I want to get in the rotation, but we're working over here. I don't know what they do over at 106.7 The Fan, but we're hard at work. We're making content.
Yeah, we are.
We're making radio.
Yeah, we are.
We're reading comments.
Yeah, we are.
We're not supposed to do that.
We tried to warn them. They didn't listen.
Yeah!
Every week, the Hoffman Show goes into the belly of the beast.
We read those comments, baby.
Never read the comments.
One of these days, Anthony, we'll be on the same page. One of these days, our communication will be as good as the Commander's secondary in May and June.
I was agreeing with you. I wasn't expecting you to take a left turn so abruptly.
You gotta have some anticipation.
Yeah. I was really into it though. That's probably what it was.
You were like, you were agreeing.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that was my cue to hit the button. What a time. What a time. It's Never Read the Comments, brought to you by
Nobody, Craig.
But it's available for sponsorship if you want to give us a call. Here's how it works. You leave your comments on our segments on YouTube. We cut up the show into digestible pieces, segments at a time. We post it up on YouTube. You leave your comments. We read them, even though we probably shouldn't. And boy, was this a week, Anthony, where I wish I didn't read the comments. We'll get to some Commander stuff in a second, but the big comment this week, unsurprisingly, was around Caitlin Clark and the Olympic team. And it was on our videos and the short that we made around David Aldridge coming on and giving an 8.5-minute answer on the absurdity of all different kinds of people who are upset for all different kinds of reasons about Caitlin Clark not making the initial Olympic roster for Team USA. Some of y'all, it was just an easy, or some of the commenters, I should say, it was just an easy hide this user, don't let you comment anymore because you said things that were out of bounds. But there's a couple, I will try to engage with a couple of good faith arguments that I disagree with because that's healthy and that's what this is about. We're allowed to have differing opinions. I'm supposed to have strong opinions. That's what they pay me for. And I do on some stuff. Other stuff, I'm like, I don't know why people are so upset about this. This one, though, I understand. And I just think there's some misunderstandings on what David has tried to say, what I have tried to say, and where some of the people watching the game who are big fans of Caitlin especially are. So I'll start off with Benjamin Obi, who said, every time a person who is only there to see Caitlin Clark watches a WNBA game, there are 9 other players on the court who they might also end up liking. Clark is a potential gateway for a casual to be a genuine WNBA fan. I think this is correct. And this is exactly what happened with Tiger Woods in golf, right? There's a lot of people that watched golf, myself included, for Tiger Woods when Tiger was at the peak of his powers. Some people stayed because they found they really actually liked the golf. And there were other golfers that they liked. I did not. I did not help grow the game of golf. I temporarily helped grow the game of golf. I inflated the game of golf for some short period of time, but I actually did not help the long-term growth of the game outside of whatever money that I may have contributed by higher ratings, whatever golf, I would play a little bit. I still do play a little bit. That really doesn't have anything to do with Tiger Woods. So there is some added value of my temporary viewership of the PGA Tour. But, by the way, look where the PGA Tour is now in a post-Tiger world, where they're in, like, both litigation and a partnership with Live Golf. Like, golf's not in a good place. So the idea that it's like, oh, she could be the Tiger Woods for golf. I'm like, not if it's going to end where golf ended. Golf's not doing the best right now. So there's that. But yes, this is true. And I hope that people who watch the W watch Caitlin face Arika Gumbawale and be like, damn, she's good too. And maybe they watch some Dallas Wings games or whatever. Because I am in the camp that has a genuine interest in growing the sport. But as Jake Hubbs, there's 2 B's and 3 Z's, Ant. So I think I said that right. Jake Hubbs says, people don't have to like a sport if they don't want to. They want to watch Caitlin Clark. It's insane to be mad at people for liking a player and wanting to follow her. And this to me is actually my biggest gripe with the current conversation. And where people who are mad online, and that's what I'm reacting to here because it is never read the comments, are upset with David being like, you could do other stuff if you wanted to grow the game, and then being like, I don't want to do the other stuff. No one is saying you have to. All we're saying is there are 2 paths here. You can be genuinely interested in growing the game of women's basketball, which means you're going to have to do more than watch Caitlin Clark. Or you can absolutely enjoy the hell out of Caitlin Clark because, my God, what an enjoyable basketball player. The way she plays, the flair, the step-back threes, she's one of one in the sport. And there is nothing wrong with appreciating her talent. Where it gets twisted, and what I think is annoying for those of us that have been around the sport for a long time and genuinely would like to see it grow, is the people who are just here, if you will, for Clark, thinking that the entire sport should bend to them because they're more important than everybody else. And I don't say this in a mean way. I don't say this in a way to say one group is greater than or better than the other. It's just you're not. Because you're not going to be around for the long term. And there's a responsibility for the sport to try to build in a more sustainable way. And specific to Clark and the Olympic team, they have a responsibility to do the job in a genuine way. If I told you without the details, a generic statement, the United States can either put together what it believes is the best Olympic team with a combination of its best players and veterans who have know-how, who have played internationally, who understand that game, or they can do a marketing bit. 100% of the people complaining and 100% of people, period, would be like, we're the United States. We play to win. Let's go. Now, if you disagree on a basketball merit of Clark versus another player, there are some arguments to be made. But these are players that have played for USA Basketball, been through World Cup cycles. They've been building this team for longer than most people have known about Caitlin Clark. And that's just a reality of how the Olympic cycles work over 4 years. And to pretend like they should do marketing when we don't do this with any other Olympic sport is just disingenuous. And all that David Aldridge was asking people to do is stop pretending. Stop pretending like you care about the women's game when realistically you just want to watch your favorite player play. And that's understandable. From a viewing standpoint, from an intrigue standpoint, I also want Caitlin Clark on the Olympic team. I think she would be tremendously fun to watch. She is my favorite WNBA player probably to watch. I enjoy her game tremendously. But I also understand why USA Basketball did what they did. And I firmly, on like a principled level, believe that it is not their responsibility to do marketing, especially on behalf of the WNBA, because they're not the WNBA. It's a different entity. Last but not least, I talked about this earlier, so I'm not going to belabor this point. I actually don't think this is that much of a missed opportunity. The league itself will grow if people are still interested in Clark and they'll watch Fever games. There's not a single extra ticket sold in Paris to anyone. Like, I know I have a women's basketball ticket for the Olympics. I could sell it in a heartbeat if I wanted to. I also would have a hard time buying more. Those tickets, they're the Olympic Games. They're going to sell out. It's not like leaving her off the WNBA All-Star Game or leaving her off of the Fever being like, hey, sorry, Caitlin's not playing tonight. That's going to implode your ticket price for a WNBA game. Different scenario. It's the Olympic Games in a foreign country. They're going to sell out. And from a TV standpoint, will they get some amount less viewers? Yeah, probably. But the number of games that they play are not significant in terms of the long-term growth of the game. So I actually think on the merits, the marketing argument is kind of silly. It's just a lot of fans who are fans of Caitlin Clark for one reason or another going, I want to watch my favorite player and I'm upset she didn't make the team. And it's okay to be upset. Just don't pretend like some great disservice was done to the game when it's really about your own personal feelings. Don't claim to be the saviors of women's basketball and then be upset when the actual sport, the thing that's existed for a long time and had to fight and scratch and claw for so much. So many people have put in so much work to get even where it is, where Caitlin Clark has the platform to then jump off of to the stardom that she has. Don't come in and pretend like they don't matter, because that's not how any of this works. That is a misread of the situation. And especially don't proclaim to care about them when you clearly don't. That's all that's being said. You don't get it both ways. So, do I think that actually probably changed anyone's mind, Anthony? Probably not. People just want to be mad on the internet, which is kind of the premise of the segment, so I get it. But I do think it's important to at least try to engage people who are engaging this in good faith to say, no one's actually mad at you for being a big Caitlin Clark fan. Go buy your Fever gear, buy her Iowa jersey if you want, do whatever you want. It's just, don't proclaim to be a women's basketball fan when you're actually a Caitlin Clark fan and then not do any of the things that actually support the game. Don't try to have it both ways. That's all I'm saying. That's all David was saying. He said it in rant form. I tried to be calm. Different strokes for different folks.
That was very calm, very cool, and it sounded very collected.
We love when that happens in this segment because sometimes I lose my bleeping mind. All right, to the Commanders for the back half of Never Read the Comments here. Johnny Cheshire, 6855, apparently new to the program. Johnny, welcome. He goes, heard you, Craig, asking Dan Quinn some questions in his interview recently. Craig didn't know you were in the media room like that. Good for you, man. I guess it's probably a good every once in a while, Anthony, to remind folks like my path here, I guess. For those that don't know, for those that are new to the program on the radio, on the internet, on wherever, I was on the beat. Like the segment we do every day at 5 o'clock for the regular radio audience who listens at 5 o'clock, we call it Not My Beat because it used to be my beat. Like that's the joke. It's a funny haha. Like it's not my beat anymore, but someone's. Let's get them in on the top story of the day. But my first job in DC was working the Commanders beat for, at the time, ESPN 980, which was owned by a company called Red Zebra Broadcasting, which was owned by a man named Dan Snyder. They didn't find the reporter position very helpful. So after my first year there, they hired me in August and then they cut the position in January. That wasn't great, but it did lead to me coming into this building at 106.7 The Fan as a part-timer and then ultimately on the beat full-time. For 3 years, I was on the Commanders beat. So I was for the better part of 5 years between the stuff I was doing for the Fan and part-time and then full-time and then the 980 first stint, I was on the Commanders beat. So yeah, I know my way around Ashburn quite well. I'm very used to being in press conferences. I don't just sit in a studio. I go places. I've been at minicamp the last 3 days. As the kids say, we do this, Anthony. I does this.
Yes, you do, sir.
Do the kids actually say that? I don't think the kids say that. They kind of do.
In basketball, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do that. Yeah.
Yeah, you drive, get an AM1, pound your chest. I do this.
Yep. I lift. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm him.
I lift weights. It's one of my favorite TikToks / shorts / whatevers of all time is the Joe Hayden mic'd up I lift weights.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yep. And then he gets
if
put
you're
on his
unfamiliar,
butt.
he's like, Joe Hayden's mic'd up. He's like, I lift weights. And he gets a good little block in, gets a little shot in on somebody. Like 3 snaps later, he just gets absolutely thrown out the club.
Yeah.
He's like, ha, damn. But as for the actual Commanders and things that happened that I saw out there, Big Papa Grizzly. I don't make them up, Anthony. I just read what's on the page. Big Papa Grizzly says, the only way Jaden Daniels doesn't start week 1 is if he is severely hurt or if he turns out to be a total fraud. The latter has already been ruled out, in my opinion. The reason I highlighted this comment, the reason that I picked this as one to respond to is because I actually really think that last part is true and important. Like, I think Jaden Daniels has already proven, like, he's got the stuff. Doesn't mean he's going to be awesome. It doesn't mean that he's not going to bust out. It doesn't mean that, like, ultimately this could look a little bit silly in years from now if he doesn't pan out to be a good NFL quarterback. But I think if he turns out to be an not be a good NFL quarterback, it's going to be because it's really hard to be a good NFL quarterback. This dude's work ethic and his processing ability and his approach, his mentality, his openness, his leadership, like, there is a ton of substance to Jaden Daniels. And I think early on in like, I'm going to pick on RG3. Sorry, Robert. Sorry, Bob. But early on in RG3's tenure, there were some folks that kind of looked at him like, I don't know about this dude. And obviously, his rookie year, he was tremendous as a player. And you kind of like, oh, okay, I guess never mind. I missed out on that. It's my bad. And then the whole all in for week 1 thing happens, and you're like, oh no, those initial inclinations might have had some truth to them in terms of how he went about his business compared to Jaden Daniels. All you hear is how great this dude is in the building. The 5:45 a.m. showing up, his relationships that he's built with guys like Bobby Wagner and Jeremy Reeves on the defensive side of the ball. Like, there is just so much substance to Jaden Daniels. And so the idea that you get him in the building and like, oh God, we may have made a mistake. You know, the most classic example of that is Ryan Leaf with the Chargers. He stops in Las Vegas on his way to San Diego from the draft, and the Chargers are like, oh no, we have made a mistake. We have been fooled in the draft process. I just think the chances of that happening with Jaden Daniels are slim to none. And it's really a question of how good is he going to be, not is he going to succeed or fail. Rix Villarreal says, the composure superpower. It's more of a reporter's cliche. I remember how they used to say the same of Sam Howell, same for the work ethic. A few hits and he is burned, and then go and say about work ethic. Look, playing quarterback is hard in the NFL. It's really, really hard. And it is a position that is reliant on others, both your play caller, your offensive line, your receivers. It is reliant on your own thing and your coaching as well, in terms of not just the play calling, but if you have a good work ethic and you don't have a coach who tells you how to channel that properly, that's different. And you might not actually maximize your own ability. And by the way, Sam Howell, for a good part of last year, was a pretty good quarterback. And so the idea that he's got a good work ethic and he's very composed, and then all of a sudden he's gone, like, yeah, they had the number 2 pick and they could get someone who was more talented and had all those stuff. Quarterback is not a single factor position. Like, we can hold multiple thoughts in our head at once. I might be able to have the composure to play NFL quarterback. Sure as hell don't have the arm, the athleticism, the processing speed, or anything else, but I could have that one thing. Multifactorial. Like, this isn't hard. Yes, we're celebrating something early on in the process. We're like, hey, this is noteworthy. This is a box checked. We like that. But that doesn't mean that the evaluation is done, that everything is written in stone and he's going to the Hall of Fame and the Commanders are going to win 12 Super Bowls in the next 12 years because he's the greatest quarterback ever. Like, there's room in between. So you, Rick Villarreal, can settle down. Last but not least, Hibiscus779 with a question. What I want to know is whether coaches or trainers are allowed to recommend private coaches or training camps to the players for the offseason or between minicamp and training camp, for instance. Obviously, the players share info about good places, people to train at/with, but I wonder what percentage actually do this. I do believe they can make recommendations. They cannot make requirements by rule because you can't require something during a non-mandatory period. So you definitely cannot be like, hey, Jaden, you have to work with this quarterback coach. But you can absolutely make recommendations. And you think about it like former players might be like, hey, this is the guy that I worked with, or a coach like a Ryan Kerrigan might be like, oh, I worked with this guy. I think you'd like him a lot. Or if they're from a certain area or know someone, like it's networking, right? Something that people in DC are so good at. But it's like, hey, where do you live? Oh, you live in LA? Well, here's a guy that I know that one of my former guys worked with that he really liked a lot. You should connect him, or I'll connect you with the player, right? So I'm sure there are limitations. There absolutely can't be requirements, but I'm sure, especially if the players ask, the coaches are not barred or permitted from saying like, yeah, this guy's good. And I would also imagine from the strength and conditioning side, Chad Englehart and his staff, the strength staff, they have guys that they like because they've worked with them in the past with players. And so it's like, oh, hey, yeah, this guy in Tampa is awesome. So if you're going to go down there, check out his facility. And if he has any questions, he can hit me up. Because I definitely do know from personal experience that there can be contact between the strength coaches and the private coaches to make sure that they're doing right by the player. So like when Lorenzo Alexander was in Buffalo, his trainer, my business partner on my Train with the Best work, Chris Gores, was in contact with the Buffalo guys because he wanted to make sure that Lorenzo was ready for the stuff that he was going to have to do in Buffalo. And so, and also like, you know, they give packets and things like that, you know, hey, if you're looking for a plan, here's what you can do. So there's a lot of options that the team can help with, but ultimately it's on the players to get ready for training camp. And this is a really, really essential part of the calendar for them to do that. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, that is our never read the comments section. You can leave yours at the Team 980. Some of the questions and comments we read were from the Team 980's page. Some of them were at Craig Hoffman. A lot of the David Aldridge comments left on the brand new Hoffman W Sports page, our home for all of our women's sports content, which, by the way, up there right now, an interview with Washington Spirit CEO Kim Stone. And in mere moments, I will be posting an interview I did earlier today with Spirit defender Gabby Carl as they are marching towards a sellout this weekend at Audi Field against Alex Morgan and the San Diego Wave. So at Hoffman W Sports, if you fancy there, subscribe to any and all of those channels that you would like. But next, live here on the Hoffman Show, our Pick 6 at 6, final one of the spring. 6 biggest things from Dan Quinn today after the Commanders wrapped up minicamp. NBA Finals talk still to come as well here on the Team 980. Final hour of the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. We are just after 6 o'clock, and that means it is time for our Pick 6.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level and build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
All right, the biggest story today, the biggest thing that happened today is actually what didn't happen today. What didn't happen today was that Dan Quinn did not name a starting quarterback.
Number one.
I'm here, Anthony. I can hit the buttons. But I'm glad that you were ready. Because we've had our communication has not been as good as the Commanders' secondary, which is something that stood out. It's excellent. The Commanders have it. We'll get back on the same page. I've been moving around a lot. I think that's on me. But
Number one
is that Dan Quinn, despite the fact that Jaden Daniels has been the QB1 the last 3 days and really most of the spring, he said don't read too much into that yet.
Well, in true competition, that's why we set it up as we did, to have Marcus have some and Jaden to have some. So no great declarations other than like being true to who we are. As competitors, there's no doubt that Jaden's making unbelievable progress here, and we'll have a really fun camp. But he's earned that opportunity to go compete. We wouldn't have given him those spaces and those times and those reps if he hadn't. But it was really clear that he's put in the work and he was ready to do that. So it was by intention for sure that he was able to do that.
So there's two things happening. One, Marcus Mariota hasn't been very good. Two, Jaden Daniels has been very good. That is why Jaden Daniels is ultimately going to be the starting quarterback for the Washington Commanders. Not eventually, which we knew eventually he would be. But I think when they open training camp, he might very well take the first snap. They might ceremonially, if you will, give Marcus Mariota the first couple of days or the first couple of snaps or whatever. They might split time. I don't know how they're going to do it because Mariota is a veteran. He has been around. You want to be respectful of that. And by the way, locker rooms, even though it drives fans crazy, locker rooms respect that kind of stuff. Locker rooms also respect meritocracy. And Jaden Daniels is clearly the better player, I think, right now. Nevertheless, what he'll be by the end of a training camp. Dude hasn't even put on NFL pads yet outside of media day. So I think that Jaden will be, this isn't a big deal. They want it to be a competition. And you just, what if he does struggle? What if all of a sudden the pads come on, there's a live rush, and, his feet get a little more unsettled, and Marcus kind of settles in, and you go, maybe we want to give him 2-3 weeks. You don't want to say it too early. So, look, 99.5% Jaden Daniels is going to be the starting quarterback week 1 for the Commanders, barring injury or something like that. When they make that declaration, probably closer to the first preseason game, and we'll see even on that front. But the big news today is that there is no big news today. Jaden Daniels not yet officially named the starter for the fall.
Number 2.
Speaking of the Commanders' defensive backs, the communication has been really, really excellent. And I think that's important to point out because it is crickets the last couple of years in that defensive backfield. The communication was just not there. And now you hear, guys, it is such a loud group, no matter who's on the field. Linebackers, DBs all chirping, D-line, make sure they're lined up correctly. All them dudes are just consistently yapping pre-snap, not talking to talk smack, because it used to be a loud defense because Chase Young would be saying nonsense, which is fine. It's not even a shot at Chase. Like, he would just be on the sidelines yelling, trying to create some energy. Now it's guys talking with purpose, making sure everybody's lined up, making sure that, hey, this combination coverage, we're in the same one. I've got this guy, you've got that guy. The offense is motioning, we're switching here. It's really, really impressive. And amongst that, there's some guys for Dan Quinn that have stood out for a variety of reasons.
I think just seeing this collective rise as the whole group, you've heard me talk about ball skills a lot, and they have really put that type of work in to find that. And thinking like an example of that was Quan yesterday to make a fantastic play. Those don't just happen. So you have to put the work in, to create takeaways, also the catching in those moments. So that alone I've been impressed by from where I saw us at the early part of the off-season program to where we're at now. I feel some identity coming along with the group, and Joe's done a really fantastic job, him along with the assistants, of helping support that identity. We're going to have a pretty deep crew, and Adam and I are going to have some really tough decisions from rosters months from now based on the work that the guys are putting in.
They're going to have some really tough decisions because I wonder how many safeties they're going to keep. Like, all of a sudden, you're like, well, damn, they got Chin, Defoe, Quan, Jeremy Reeves, Dominique Hampton, Percy Butler. Like, that's already 6. And there's a couple other guys that have been impressive and gotten some reps high up the depth chart that I haven't even mentioned yet. And, like, as a guy like Reeves, who's been the heart and soul of this team and is a all-pro special teams player 2 years ago, in a year where special teams is going to be re-emphasized because of the new kickoff rule, are you really going to let him go? So all of a sudden, the defensive backfield is loaded, and you got to make some really tough decisions on exactly what you're going to do back there. Nevertheless, at corner, where you've got kind of, I don't want to say the opposite problem, but you certainly have some questions in terms of who you're going to wind up keeping, and your options are not quite as lauded or rich at the cornerback spot. Versatility, always key, though, and there's 2 guys in particular that are going to be all over the field, and the 2 who they are, I think, is actually really important. First, DQ, reveal the names.
I would say some of what I was hoping to see, I did, and maybe that's with Chin. I would say it's been good to see Martin, some down in the box, but some as a middle field safety. Luvu, although I knew that was a part of his game, I'd say it was probably even stronger than I thought. So those would be some, that jump out to me. And then on the offensive side, we've worked, some receivers who could move into the backfield and vice versa. So, yeah, it's an ongoing process, but sometimes you just try it, take a look, and not. Same thing with the kick return.
The original question there about versatility, and he talks about Martin and Chin to start. And the reason I think that's significant for this team is I think those are their 2 starting safeties. And if they can be in 2 high, single high, one can be down in the box, the other can be down in the box, and they can each play the other's role, nevertheless get someone else on the field, move one of them into a Buffalo nickel or a true nickel role. Like, all that stuff means you can disguise better, and it's harder to get the defense in a bind. Not to say that offenses won't get them at some point over the 17 games, but like if you like to rock and roll your safeties, and what that means is, say you've got a 3 wide receiver set, slots to the left. That receiver comes over, now he's going slot right. For some teams, that means the strong side of the formation has changed, or tight end moves, and now all of a sudden you got to switch your safeties, and they got to switch sides of the field. Now the communication, hey, I might have communicated something to my right cornerback, but now I'm playing on the left side safety because that's the strong or weak side of the formation. Now, like, all Quan and Chin have to do is be like, switch. And maybe one rolls down in the box and the other rocks back over the top. And, like, you can do stuff like that as one example really easily because you have 2 safeties that can fit the strong and the free role, not to mention whatever other kind of dime linebacker, etc. stuff that Dan Quinn is going to throw at them. So what that translates to most likely is those 2 being on the field, not 100% of the snaps, because they have the versatility to be able to do it, they'll probably rotate them a little bit. But those 2 of the safety group, I think, will be the guys who are on the field the most. And I actually don't even know in terms of snap percentage if that'll be particularly close game in, game out when they're healthy.
Number 3.
Continuing on our pick 6 at 6, taking the 6 biggest sound bites of the day, 6 biggest storylines from Commanders minicamp, the last practice today of the off season. The starting offensive line is definitely a little up in the air. I still don't think we 100% know who the 5 are going to be. I think 4 of the 5 are probably going to be Andrew Wiley at right tackle, Sam Cosmi at right guard, Tyler Biadasz at center. That's locked in. Left guard's more than likely going to be Nick Allegretti. And then the left tackle spot is the one that's the big up in the air between Trent Scott, Brandon Coleman, and Cornelius Lucas. So how long until Dan Quinn ultimately makes that decision? DQ talking after practice earlier today, and the answer went something like this.
Yeah, I don't have a calendar date set, that I've circled. It has to be by this time. I don't want to, if it's you see it, you do it. And but certainly at the line of scrimmage on both sides, we all owe it to ourselves to take that process all the way through. And fortunately for us, we've planned ahead as we're going into practices. We have some other scrimmages against other teams, so we'll have some opportunities that will be really beneficial for the big guys, and we'll take them all.
Those become really critical, too, because let's say you're terrible at blocking John Allen, but you're really good against everyone else. That's useful information because John Allen's excellent, and you shouldn't just bench a guy because he can't block John Allen, for instance. Or maybe you're awesome at blocking John Allen, and then you struggle against another body type. Like if Nick Allegretti figures out John Allen's hump move because he gets to play it against it every day, then all of a sudden they go against Miami's defensive tackles in that joint practice, and he struggles. It's like, well, that's a data point. So, again, this is a group that is thorough. They are gathering a bunch of stuff in terms of information and how guys play together, who they're playing against, all this kind of stuff, and they'll make a decision eventually. And I do think with an O-line, by the middle of camp, you do want to have a first five really solidified in your mind because you want to let them start to get reps together. O-line play is a real group project, and everyone's got to do their part. And so deciding who the group is and allowing them to figure out what their parts are and how other guys do stuff and how they communicate and all that kind of stuff, they got to do that. But the reality is offensive line is a position where there's typically a good bit of attrition and guys are in and out of the lineup, whether it's you missed 3 series in a game or whether you missed 3 games. And what they're also doing on that unit is mixing and matching guys to ensure that guys are cross-trained and tested at different positions. So let's say Tyler Biotish goes down. Do we want to keep Nick Allegretti at left guard and put Ricky Stromberg in at center? Or do we want to kick Allegretti inside to center and put Chris Paul at left guard? Or whatever the combination is. Do you want to then say, oh, if Andrew Wiley goes out, we're going to put Cornelius Lucas there? Or do we want to kick Sam Cosmi out because we think Cosmi at right tackle and a different right guard is better? I think, by the way, right now, they would just move Cornelius Lucas to right tackle and keep Cosmi at guard. But these are the kinds of things that you want to test out and consider, and you want to know your personnel, and there's only so much time that you have to test that stuff out. They did a really great job of it in the spring, and it sounds like that will continue on some level into the early fall.
Number 4.
Of course, the biggest change this year is the new kickoff rule and figuring out how to cover it, how to return it. It's been an ongoing process. What is the type of returner that you want? And by the way, for the Commanders, they also got to figure out who's actually going to kick the football. That probably is going to go well into September, when they see who gets cut from other teams. But how'd that all go the last couple of months for Dan Quinn?
I say much stronger than months ago when it was first introduced. Landing zones, touchbacks, what types of kicks, what types of returns. So the preseason will be big too. We have a couple of practices, so we'll get not only in the preseason games, but some practices. And what we've done here over the last couple of days, we just split the team into 2 groups. You were kickoff one day, the next day you were kickoff return, and just tested different ways and different things. So it was also nice to have the officials here because where do they stand? How do they officiate it? So 2-part, us to get reps, but I also wanted to provide an opportunity for the officials who are here. This is their first take, and you don't want anything first to be in a game.
So there you go. It is a rule that you're still trying to learn the nuances of, and guys want to understand it. And it's funny because, I actually overheard Terry McLaurin talking to Dan Quinn and the officials today, because Terry's not involved in kickoff. Typically, when they do special teams, Terry's off on the side catching balls or working on releases, or he's doing extra stuff because he ain't playing special teams, which is genuinely hilarious if you remember that the first bullet on his scouting report when he was drafted was best special teams player in the draft. Hasn't played it down to special teams his entire NFL career. With that said, Terry was talking with DQ, and DQ was explaining the landing zone, and I could hear Terry be like, oh, I didn't know that. So this is definitely new. There's going to be guys that get confused. The goal is to make sure that it's not any of the guys actually playing special teams. And it certainly doesn't feel like it's going to happen in Washington because they have these guys very, very prepared. Two more things in our pick 6 at 6.
Number 5.
Dan Quinn had Ken Norton Jr., their linebackers coach, address the team today in the final big team meeting before everybody split for the summer. By the way, cool thing they did after practice, apropos of none of that. They had family day. So amongst others, Julie Ertz, the soccer Hall of Famer, and Zach's wife, of course, was out there. But tons of families out there. They had a big barbecue afterwards. So kind of a very cool Dan Quinn family type of thing that they did after practice today. But before practice, Ken Norton, the multi-time Super Bowl champion linebacker, turned linebackers coach, addressed the team, and Dan Quinn started his press conference today with an opening statement explaining why he did that.
And as you guys know, Ken was a part of 3 Super Bowl teams back to back to back. But what he talked about today wasn't about the Super Bowl teams. It was about the lead up to that and what these 40 days are like in between, from the, what you would call the end of the mini camp into what the start of that next is. And he talked about that love, that connection, the work. He talked about being some hungry wolves, and knowing that that's where you make the difference, that you will not let one another down. I thought it was such a powerful message by Ken. You can always count on him for that, but it was just his life experience. He saw some similarities of him coming up with this group bonding together, and we had him share that with the team today, so it was excellent.
It's good stuff because it's important when you're starting something to have people validate what you're doing. It gives you that purpose to be like, yeah, I am on the right track, as opposed to fearing that you'll be 3 years in and be like, wow, we really messed up year one. We got ourselves off course and we're driving in the wrong direction, and now we're stuck because, as a staff, you get fired for that. As players, you probably get cut and you're now working for a new boss because you haven't had a lot of success. So to have someone like Ken Norton co-sign what they're building here this early in the process is great. It's going to give these guys an added sense of purpose. Good choice by DQ. And it also just tells you the kind of staff they've assembled. Ken Norton's a really, really good and well-respected linebackers coach, but obviously his background is unimpeachable in terms of what he was as a linebacker in the actual NFL, and he's coaching Bobby Wagner. What a room that is. Last but not least,
Number 6.
in our pick 6 at 6, Dan Quinn asked, just very simply, what these last few months have been like for him. It's a second shot as a head coach. He's now through his first spring 2.0, if you will. So what's it been like, DQ, to be back in charge these last couple of months?
Yeah, I would say, one, I love having this chance with this group. And I think early on, when Josh and Adam, the decision to bring me here, what I was also looking for from them, and support and partnership, that went all the way through the coaching staff. So I got a chance to bond with the coaches prior to bonding with the players. And so it made me happy that one of our Bill Walsh fellows had said, man, you would have thought you guys would have been together for some years, not for some months. And so that doesn't happen, just on accident. So I would say, man, I love the coaching staff and getting to coach and be involved. And so that's probably been the first part. And then the second part over maybe the month, I would say, I've 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, like I felt this tide start to roll with some momentum about the improvement. And I felt like that's why this might be the end of minicamp, man. Like I feel like our foundation is starting. And so we're about to go for it in a very big way. And it's cool to see the shift take place.
We were talking on Take Command today, and Logan used a phrase that I really like that kind of echoes what DQ said at the end there, which is, I feel like they've laid a really good foundation, and I'm excited to see the house they build on top of it. The spring is for the foundation. You build the house in training camp. You live in it during the season. And obviously this process repeats. There's a lot of renovating over the years, if you will, if you want to keep that analogy going. But they did an excellent job of laying the foundation. Now we're going to see what they build. And that comes starting in late July through August, the preseason, and then into September and week 1 against the Bucks. So the other thing that I'll point out there that I've definitely noticed that I really appreciate, I've really appreciated, I should say, about this group is even though Cliff and Anthony Lynn and Brian Johnson have never worked together, and those guys have never worked with Dan and anybody on the defensive side of the ball, this is a cohesive unit. The messaging, the smoothness of practice, I I actually had this thought today. Inevitably, there will be some fight at training camp because dudes are going to be out there and it's hot and it's sweaty and guys are competitive, and especially with the competitive juices flowing. But like, there is a huge respect level, staff to staff and player to player across the entire team. And that is not how it usually is in the NFL. Certainly is not how it has been here. I should speak more to that, right? I've covered this team far closer than I have any other. And in the whatever number of years I have been here, since 2015, covering this team on the beat, and then as a talk show host who goes out there with regularity, especially during this time of year, I have never seen a unit that is together and a coaching staff that across the ball is as together as this one. And again, does that guarantee anything? Absolutely not. But is it better to have that than not have it? Hell yeah, it is. So now the fun part begins. Well, first we wait, and then the fun part begins with training camp starting in late July. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. That is our Pick 6 at 6. We put it in its box. We store it away for the summer, and we bring it back come training camp time in July. Pick 6 at 6, our 6 biggest storylines at 6 o'clock. Up next, the other big storyline of the day, non-Commanders adjacent, NBA Finals, 3-0 Celtics. Do the Mavs have a chance, and why has it gotten so horribly wrong for a Mavs team that was on fire coming out of the Western Conference Finals and their win over Minnesota? We'll break it all down next here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. NBA Finals now 3-0, Anthony. It's the team that I picked is up. The team that you picked is down. How long until we just say there's a curse of Anthony?
I think that's what it might be, Craig. I think that's what it be. But also yesterday, you also said that
I did think the Mavs would win last night.
Yeah.
I did think they would bounce back
but
and
it was
win.
also I also decided or chose that they were gonna win last night as well. So maybe it is me, Craig.
Maybe it is.
So maybe not, because now I'm gonna jinx myself. I don't want to.
Whatever you say, it's just going to be the opposite.
Yeah. Well,
Can you hedge? Can you hedge on your own bad luck
Celtics
or
will
lack
win
of skill in
7
picking correctly?
or 6 or 5. Celtics will sweep the Mavs.
It seems like one of those is the likely outcome. Because if not, if the Mavs win in 7, it would be the first time in NBA history that goes down. I think last night's pretty fascinating because Porzingis was a huge, huge factor in games 1 and 2. And the Celtics got what they needed last night. We talked about this game very briefly. We were loaded yesterday, so we did not get a chance to talk about this game as much as I probably would have liked to. But there was something I said at the end of the show that turned out to be really, really important last night, which is part of why Porzingis was so damn good against Dallas was he was being used as a legitimate bench player, a.k.a. he was playing against bench players. And Kristaps Porzingis, who's an all-star caliber player, playing against NBA bench players is not a fair fight. And so those minutes tended to swing dramatically in Boston's favor, and especially in game 2, but even in game 1, right? Like, Mavs started to make some substitutions late in that first quarter, and Kristaps Porzingis loses his ever-loving mind, and that's the thing that launches, Boston into that mega lead that never came close to being touched in game 1. Despite a Mavs run, the hole was so big, like I don't even know if they ever got it back to single digits in game 1. Last night, of course, the game 3, or the third quarter is a huge run for Dallas, by Boston, and Mavs have this ridiculous stretch in the fourth quarter where Boston forgets how to play offense, and we can talk about that in a second. But they got the minutes they needed, specifically out of Xavier Tillman last night, where instead of the bench becoming a huge factor for Dallas and all of a sudden it's a fair fight and one that maybe the Dallas Mavs can win, Boston still has a better time in a lot of those minutes. Guys like Tim Hardaway finally get a shot. He not only doesn't help you offensively, some of the biggest buckets in the game come against him defensively, and that's continues to be a huge difference in this game, is that those minutes where the Boston superpower or four of the 5 guys are not on the floor for Boston, like you get at least some of them off, the Whites, the Holidays, obviously J&J. Dallas can't do enough damage in those minutes to make up for when they're on the floor together, and lo and behold, they're down 3-0 in the series.
Did you see Joel Embiid's tweet about whether or not the Bucks gave the Celtics the championship?
Dude, I did. And it sure feels like it. And I know that they wanted to make that trade because they wanted Damian Lillard. And I don't think it's indefensible to make a trade for essentially trade Damian Lillard for Drew Holiday, considering the needs that the Bucks had in terms of another shot creator. But I do think if you're in Milwaukee's front office today, you are I know Joel is trolling because Joel is a troll. He's one of the funniest trolls in sports. He's genuinely hilarious. But I think that if you're in Milwaukee's front office today, are you is giving the Celtics Drew worth us getting Dame? And they had to know that was a potential option. And I would think the answer is no. That's just my own personal opinion.
I mean, I would agree. I think it also just goes to show how having, or I guess investing so much money in 1 to 2 superstars can, be detrimental for your roster.
You say that, but they're going to pay the combined total contract numbers once Tatum gets his supermax, and he's already on a max, but he's about to get a second one, are going to be over $600 million between Brown and Tatum.
Yeah, and they're going to lose some pieces. They're going to lose maybe
They will.
A Peyton Pritchard. They're maybe going to lose a Sam Hauser. They're probably going to lose a Derek White. Like, you
But,
need these
Derek
solid
White's a different category. But, like, listen to what you just said. Do you think the Celtics are going to miss Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard? They're going to be like, no, kids, go get paid.
But they're also a part of the 8 Celtics that, made 100 threes on the season. Like, the fact
For
that
sure.
they can knock down threes, be reliable in that instance. And we've seen, how instrumental the bench has necessarily been. I mean, maybe not yesterday's game. They didn't give too much off the bench. But
I mean, that's the thing, though. Yesterday in the Sam Hauser minutes, I mean, he's essential. He's 3 threes. He's a plus 16 in 14 minutes.
Yeah.
In a 7-point game. Xavier Tillman's a plus 9. Tatum's a minus 4 in 42 minutes. So there are 6 minutes in that game where Jason Tatum is on the bench. And in those 6 minutes, and like, I'm not saying Tatum played poorly. He had 31 points. He kept them afloat in the first half.
Yep.
He's the reason why it's close enough at halftime for them to then do what they did in the second half, where Jaylen Brown lost his ever-loving mind.
Yeah, that third quarter, man,
was incredible. And, JB is a plus 13. So why plus minus is a flawed stat. It requires context. But, like, somewhere in the 6 minutes where Jason Tatum was on the bench, the Celtics flipped the game from minus 4 to plus 7.
Yeah.
So I'm going to guess a lot of that came in the 14 minutes that Sam Hauser was on the floor.
Yeah.
And, like, that's the game. But I also think that, like, specifically to this series, this is why Zach Lowe is Zach Lowe. He pointed out the stat after game 2 of the catch and shoot threes and how the Celtics have doubled up the Mavericks in terms of attempts, and that continued last night. Hauser's getting those catch and shoot threes. Boston's able to get penetration. Dallas has to help. Dallas is playing this kind of hybrid zone, and Boston's able, just because not only do they have talented guys who can pass, dribble, and shoot, but they're also really intelligent basketball players. Some of the passing they're doing is so quick and so smart, and they see cutters, and then they see the next pass, and they know where they're going. Like, some of that comes because they're playing chess. Like, Dallas is playing this hybrid zone to make sure that Gafford and Lively are in help position. The dunker spot is what they call it in the modern NBA, and it's like, you might hear JJ Redick talk about that or Doris talk about that on the broadcast. And it's kind of this 18-foot on the baseline. You sit there and you kind of wait as an offensive player, and you sit there and your goal is to just dive in at the right time and get a dunk. That's why they call it the dunker spot. It's what the Heat did with Udonis Haslem back in the day. He was kind of the OG dunker spot guy in the modern NBA offense, where LeBron and D-Wade would run these pick and rolls, get downhill, the help would come up, and then you dart in from that spot on the baseline, catch a pass, and dunk it, a.k.a. the dunker spot, and it's a place you hide non-shooters. Well, what the Celtics would try to do is say, we're going to stick whoever Kyrie Irving is guarding in the dunker spot. That way, when Tatum and Brown get downhill on drives, the person in position to help is not Daniel Gafford, it's Kyrie Irving. So the Mavs are like, okay, we're going to play a quasi-zone, and we're going to make sure that Kyrie's not the dunker spot. So all of a sudden, the Celtics engineer it to have the guy who Kyrie Irving is going to wind up on be Jason Tatum. And now Jason Tatum's got a one-on-one with Kyrie Irving, and it doesn't matter who's in the dunker spot. Kyrie is, as Shaq would say, barbecue chicken.
Or a chair.
Or a chair.
Going to shoot
Either
off.
way.
I think the other fascinating, or it's not even fascinating, obvious takeaway from the game is, Luka's lack there of defense.
Yes.
And it's not even that, he's not playing defense. It's, if you're going to be a bona fide superstar in the NBA, like, you have to learn to defend. The LeBrons had to learn to defend. Kobe, he came out as a, just who he was as a player, his tenacity on the defensive side of the ball. Tatum had to learn how to defend. KD going to Golden State, being grilled by Draymond and everybody else to buy into playing defense.
He was an awesome defender that year.
Exactly.
Inside and out. He provided rim protection. He was good on the ball. He was everything.
So I think Luka, in the grand scheme of things, I think he's going to learn from this, but also he just has to be better, like, as a teammate. Like, there's reports about like how he was talking to his teammates and things he was saying, and it's just I understand like emotions may get the best of you in that moment, but still you got to stick together. You're the leader of this team, and you got to just make sure everybody's on one accord. Like I don't know, he's gonna learn a lot from this, and hopefully next year or 2 years, 3 years from now, like he's back on this stage and he just has a better approach.
I will say this quickly about Luka, because obviously that's a huge story. We haven't even talked about those. We talked about the Boston side of it a lot and the good things they've done. I thought the officiating last night was poor, but it was consistent. And that's kind of what you want good and consistent, but they let a lot of stuff go. They were letting those dudes play last night, and Luka was bothered by it. Now, a lot of stuff they let go, to be explicitly clear, they let fouls go. Dudes getting hacked at the rim, body checks out near half court. Like, there was a lot of contact that they should have called. And it was a problem because there was time in the kind of that third quarter run where things got a little chippy. And I was like, whoa, we about to get some double text on someone. Like, guys were really trying to test that line. As an official, you got to rein that in. Like, I don't think that's a good job of officiating. But to their credit, they were at least consistent. And Luka, his sixth foul is so incredibly stupid to just try to take a charge in the open court. You never get that call. That is essentially you getting pissed off playing 2K and holding the charge button, jumping in front of somebody.
Yeah.
You don't get that call in 2K. You don't get it in the NBA. And so, yeah, Luka's got to do a way better job in his emotions because that game was there for them last night. Boston's offense, for all the good things and all the compliments we gave them and all that they earned in the first three quarters, they imploded in the fourth quarter, taking dumb shots, just not doing the things they got them there. And that game was there for Dallas to have. And if it's 2-1, we're having a very different conversation. It's not. It's 3-0. And, that banner's probably coming to Boston. Add another one at TD Garden.
I feel like they've been playing this physical all series long. Even game one, when I seen JB on Kyrie on the island, like he was getting away with the arm tug and a little body. Like
it's the finals.
Exactly. So
refs know it.
I love that they're allowing them to like be this physical and play this physical. And Luka, he just got to stop complaining to the refs, man. Like, everybody's getting bumped. Bump back, but just don't foul.
Right.
Like,
but that's the thing is he does both. He yells, then he bumps back, and then the refs are like, I don't like you.
Yeah.
And it's not personal. It's professional.
Yeah.
But it's also very human. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, we will wrap up the show with real things real people said into real microphones, including a Hoffman Show streak that's on the line this weekend. Ooh! It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Anthony, I need your help to wrap up the show here, and then we got real things in just a second. I will say tomorrow on the show, should have Clinton Yates on a Friday. Then again, who knows? Who knows where in the world is Clinton Yates? I know he's traveling, so we'll see if we have Yates. We got Mystics and Sky tomorrow night for the second straight Friday. Actually last week it was Thursday, but Mystics and Sky, Angel Reese's second game in DC. This one's going to be at ESA. So we will do that tomorrow. She's coming off a 20-point game, and a big loss, though, they had to the Connecticut Sun. So we'll preview that game. Anything else of note already on the schedule for tomorrow? A wide open day.
Yeah, nothing off the top. Nothing off the top.
All right. So last thing I need your help with real quick. Anthony, I have video from practice today that I'm going to post on YouTube to my Shorts feed, where Sam Hartman and David Blau throw the ball in the bucket. It's the fade ball to the back corner of the end zone, get it in the trash can drill, and David Blau and Sam Hartman both hit it. I have the video. What music should I put behind it? I'm going to let you a chance to redeem yourself since you started the show accidentally playing an Aerosmith song. Like a love ballad, which is not the vibe of this radio show.
That is a pressure question, but I think you should go with Fiend.
Okay.
Travis
It's not a bad call. Yeah, it's not a bad call.
That's something off the top of my head. I may have a better,
All right, well, you think about it.
Okay.
You think about it. Well, I share with the people a streak that is on the line this weekend.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5-11, not very good.
Set into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
All right, before this streak, I just saw breaking news on my phone, and it sucks. Mystics breaking news. Son of a biscuit! Is there other breaking news, Anthony?
There was other breaking news.
What's the other breaking news?
Trevor Lawrence has got a 5-year, $275 million extension with the Jags, $200 million guaranteed, $142 at signing.
That's a lot of money.
Yes.
It's a lot of shampoo he can buy. I feel like that's the necessary low-hanging fruit of a Trevor Lawrence joke. Trevor Lawrence is very good at football. He definitely has not been quite as a hit as we thought he would be coming out, but he also had to start his career with Urban Meyer, so that tends to set things back. No, the really crappy Mystics news that just came down is Brittany Sykes is out for the quote-unquote immediate future, and it's what I feared, because the other night she retweaked her ankle, and like the foot that had the ankle injury, but the way that it rolled and the way she was holding it afterwards, I was like, that's a foot issue. That's not an ankle, and it's listed as a foot, so that sucks. The Mystics, at this point, I would argue she's their best player, out tomorrow night and for the quote-unquote immediate future. So good for the draft stock, bad for the winning. All right. I have been good for the winning for the Washington Spirit. When they have had a player on our show, that player has scored. The only player that hasn't scored was Casey Kruger, who came on right after she scored, and the day she was on, she got called up to the U.S. Women's National Team. So, I today got the chance to talk to Spirit defender Gabby Carl, and had to let her know, congratulations, Gabby, you're going to score this weekend. Are you ready to score this weekend? Because, I don't know if you were aware of this, but there is a bit of a streak going on with our show, where every week that we got a player on, that player has scored. Now, a lot of them have been forwards, so which is nice. But, like, we had Andy on, and she got to the penalty spot and scored. Like, Hatchie, Croy, and Hal. Like, I don't know. I'm hoping it continues, but are you ready to maybe score this weekend?
Is this the first time you've told one of us that this was a streak?
I do think it is. So if you don't, it's 100% my fault. But it's the first time I think we mentioned it in the interview, but it's definitely like we've been discussing it. Like it's on Twitter. We've made like reels out of it. It's not a secret.
Okay, well, I am ready, but if it doesn't happen, it's your fault.
It's my fault. It's my fault. No pressure. I'm not. My whole identity isn't wrapped up in it. It's fine. I'll be okay. But I'm really hoping for you. I'm hoping that you score this
Thank
weekend.
you. Thank you. Me too.
Yeah, the streak is strong enough now, Anthony. That I'm not afraid. I'm going to call my shot. I think on a corner, the ball is going to squirt out, and Gabby's gonna get one. And that, or maybe even an open play. I mean, she gets forward a good bit. She gets out there, cuts someone. Yeah. Fire a shot on goal. I'm just saying.
Outside of the penalty box is what you're saying.
This would be the biggest flex, by far. Gabby Carl is, by position, not a goal scorer. Excellent goal preventer.
Yeah.
Not a goal scorer. So, fingers crossed.
Do you think you put pressure on her?
Nah.
Okay.
Nah. And that was important to say, hey, if it doesn't happen, it's not your fault, Gabby.
Yeah.
It's not your fault. All right. We'll be back tomorrow. It's Hoffman Show on Team 980. It'll be Friday, which is exciting. BetMGM tonight is next.